Okay, this one's going to be a hard one, but if you ever wanted to know how far you could get with a few SM57s and an amazing set of musicians, this is that. So here's what we're going to do today. We are going to watch 3 of the most iconic Vulfpeck performances. We're going to analyze their production style and the way their mixes sound as accurately as we can. And then we're going to recreate 1612 as accurately as possible. And because of how minimal the recording setup is, we're going to have to rely a lot on the quality of our performance. Not saying we can't do that. It's just scary. We're going to be doing this in my apartment too. And, I'm moving soon, so that's why we're doing it now.
Told you I was moving. Promise I'm not intentionally trying to look really moody. This is just the only light I have right now. Here's the cool part. After we're done recreating this track as accurately as possible, mix-wise, the actual mastering engineer who mastered 1612 and who mastered most of the early Vulfpeck discography is going to master our recreation of 1612. That's all because our sponsor Goodhertz, Devin Kerr, who's the mastering engineer, also happens to work at Goodhertz. And that's like one of the most informative sections I feel like I've ever had in any video. So definitely stick around.
So let's go ahead and start with probably the most iconic Vulfpeck track, Back Pocket. All right, so right off the bat, we are looking at a 2 microphone setup on the drums, and that's about it. We have an SM57 hanging off axis to the kick drum, which you'll notice as we watch a few of these different videos. That is a trend for them. It's like their most common kick mic setup is an SM57 90 degrees off axis from the kit. And then we have what looks to be, I think, a ribbon microphone. I'll put the exact model in the edit, facing the snare with a t-shirt over the snare to dampen it. And then obviously as much pillows and padding as possible around the kick. That's going to dampen the sound, get a bit more of an aggressive kick sound that has a bit shorter of a decay time and a faster attack. I'm wondering if this little cushion here is also deadening the kick sound, since that's right in front of the kick drum. Maybe it's not as resonant as like the carpet below. Now this session, I can already tell by listening to it, this is not everything that's in the session. What we probably have going on, Jack and the conga player are probably the only thing being recorded in the room. I know Joe Dart is typically just a DI bass, and the whirly that we saw a little bit earlier, that's probably going to be a whirly that's just DI as well. Same with the guitars. So really the only microphones in the room are like 3 mics, the ones on the drum kit and the one on the conga. And obviously those vocals weren't done in the room. Those vocals were done after the instrumental session. One thing interesting about a Vulfpeck track that I'm sure I'll get more nerdy about later in the video, they're not really afraid to be really loud. And what I mean by that, I don't mean like really aggressive, loud drumming or anything like that. It's that the input signals that are going into these mixes are pretty hot. And, you know, later on down the line, that makes it so, you know, it's a pretty fat, pretty compressed audio signal. And it's specifically whenever it comes to the drums. One of the ways this is possible is probably because of the minimal drum setup. You know, if you're really compressing the kick or you're really compressing the snare a lot and you're doing most of the processing in the snare and you're getting a really full roomy tone by throwing on a bunch of compressors to a signal that's already really loud and really hot. If you were to example also mic the hi-hat or play a hi-hat part, that can get like really busy and really shrill really quick. But because you can see here Jack is just playing a kick snare part and there's just 2 microphones on the snare, you can kind of get away with this big fat overcompressed sound because it's not too trebly or too harsh. In another video, I want to say it's Deantown, I think, you'll notice that like Theo Katzman is playing a hi-hat, and I think he's also playing a lamp with chopsticks. I would say there might even be a strategic reason why there's a hi-hat and a lamp separate from the original drum kit, which I think is being played with a mallet and then like a regular snare. You can probably EQ them separately without too much bleed into the snare from the hi-hat.
When you kissed me on the playground, but lost my breath, I had to lay down and assess what I had seen.
Hear how the cymbal is over on the right, even though we have just 2 microphones on the kick and snare? I might even venture to say that is a duplicate of the snare microphone that has been EQ'd and processed differently to kind of bias the cymbal, and then it's panned over to the right.
Tiptoe, and I want to acknowledge my...
All right, so let's move on to 1612. This is the track that we will actually be recreating. All right, so immediately I am hearing some overdubs. I'm hearing some snaps or some claps that I don't think were in the room. We're probably looking at a session that's done mostly live with a few parts added in post. This is going to be really hard to tell what's going on because this is like the blurriest of all the Vulfpeck videos. Antoine is just using a Shure SM58, and you'll notice that throughout this entire session, only thing in the room are going to be SM58s, SM57s on the drum kit and the vocals. I'm assuming everything else is DI. There's a nice like room sound or maybe like a really short delay on his voice. It's a Sims. So notice on the oohs and all that, there was more of a room sound on his voice that has been automated down now that we're in the verse. What you need to set it. Sometimes I write a little. First off, drum kit playing super quiet, probably not trying to bleed into the vocal microphones. I don't know, drummers, you might have to tell me what this is. Making like a shaker sound, like a tambourine or something maybe. Yeah, it's a tambourine. Sometimes I write a little song to remember the lyrics. I go 12. Can't tell what's miking the snare. Looks like it has a t-shirt on it. We could guess that it was that same ribbon microphone that's been miking the snare from the back pocket video, or we could guess that it's an SM57. I think both would probably work. We have a kick drum that has the same SM57 off axis from the kick that we saw before, and then something under it. I don't know. What is that? That's a coat to my heart. I go 1, 6. Might be monitoring themselves in the room with like that rolling cube in the background. Who knows? Nobody is wearing monitors, so that's probably the case. What is that? For Torres, a strike on the box. Ooh, Ford Focus, pretty flat dining Hathaway. Frank Sinatra. 1612. Okay, again, 1612, the chorus comes in and we start to hear that slapback delay again. So we're automating effects as we, get further into the song, depending on the part of the song as well. That's to my heart. One thing that I've noticed a lot in Vulfpeck performances is they tend to use dynamic microphones that they then, like I mentioned before, really process. Like for example, this video is sponsored by Goodhertz. Goodhertz is an amazing plugin company and they work directly with Vulfpeck. So they have something called the Vulf compressor. The Vulf compressor is incredibly strong. It's a really aggressive compressor and it can take things like a dynamic microphone and you can bring out the sound of the room by squeezing it really hard, and you can get a lot of detail on things like the drum kit or the bass by squeezing all the transients out. You can really make a lot out of a little, and I think 1612 is a really great example of that. What is that? What is this thing? And I would know what it is if it was just less blurry, but that's like their vibe. Peace of mind, oh friend of mine. That's a perfect example of what I'm talking about with automating reverb and vocal effects. Peace of mind, completely dry. Oh, friend of mine, super verbed out, and then they just let it run. So again, a lesson that we can learn from here. Your reverb shouldn't necessarily always be static. It's telling a narrative story by following vocal dynamics and by following the verse and chorus and song structure. Ooh, no verb on it. Ee-hee-hee. Tons of verbs. I'm also noticing on the vocal mix that a lot of times SM58s, they have a bit of like a top end peak in them, like around 5 to 7K. That seems to be cut out. Like that's kind of a Vulfpeck vibe too, at least on these earlier records. They cut a lot of the top end out and then it makes it just like a bit more retro, which you can kind of already tell because of what they did to the camera. It's an aesthetic. Audio is an aesthetic too. And it's going to be hard to do an Antoine Staley. I do not envy our vocalist Taylor for having to do that. Let's review, shall we? So what we've learned, first thing, a lot of the harmonic information like the guitars, the vocals and the bass, the keys, the things that are actually creating notes, a lot of these are DI or done in post, except for 1612 looks like the vocals were done live. In the room, primarily we're using dynamic microphones, and almost always that means an SM57 or an SM58. Just based off of hearing this, we have a lot of the top end removed, and we also have a pretty hot compressed signal. A lot of the times the drum kit has this off-axis SM57 placement, and we're bringing out the sound of the space through compression on these dynamic microphones. I would imagine the sound that we're going to get right off the bat is going to take a lot of processing. What we know going into this session is pretty straightforward. Mic the drum kit using a fairly minimal setup, have the drummer play pretty quiet, don't use monitors, and then have a bunch of direct outs for everything else. We'll see how this goes. I'm primarily concerned with just capturing the musicality behind this, because it's a live performance. There's not much you can do to like a vocal in a live performance scenario, and these guys are amazing musicians with just a great feel and a great groove. So we'll see if we can match it. Anyways, wish me luck, and I'll see you on the other side.
It's supposed to be like the producer tagline thing they do. All right, friends, as per usual, it's been about a month. I've done an entire shoot. We filmed 1612 in that living room right over there. Let's break down how we did it. A couple weeks back, if you're on the East Coast, you remember that heat wave? I'm right in the middle of it, and there's no AC because of the audio, so bear with me if I get really sweaty. So I'm going to begin this second half by saying I actually checked out Jack Stratton's mixing course. He breaks down a bunch of Vulfpeck tracks over there, and I took a lot of these mixing techniques from him. But out of respect for Jack and out of respect for Vulfpeck, I can't really just give away the exact formula that he has behind a paywall. So definitely go check out the course and see how he breaks down the Vulfpeck sound, but here's just some little crumbs that should help us out. Specifically, here's some plugins that he uses. So of course, most paramount to this entire thing is the Goodhertz Vulf compressor. We use that all over this track on top of the soft tube transient shaper and the soft tube focusing EQ. Now, if you want to see my mix breakdown of how I made this track, that's available on Patreon for $5 a month alongside every single other mix breakdown on this channel, every project on this channel. The raw stems are available down below to download if you want to try and mix this yourself and follow along. All right, let's break down the drum sound first. So we placed the drummer and the vocalist in the exact same positions relative to the 1612 video. I think that's really important for mic placement and mic bleed in this scenario. All bass, guitar, and keys were done DI using the studio monitors in the room to pipe in the sound so the vocalist could monitor themselves. Claps were added in post later.
Wait, go back. That's not right. What's wrong? Why did you do
I'm getting nervous now. There were only two different microphones on the drum kit. There was two SM57s, one on the snare, and then one directly off axis from the kit, just hanging down from the kick drum with some padding directly below it. Now the snare was actually kind of the biggest struggle whenever it comes to the drum sound because of that like drumstick tambourine thing that they were using. We have our own like little makeshift version of it, and we were getting just a ton of the tambourine in the snare because the mic was so close to that drumstick. Shout out to Michael, as always, the drummer in all of these videos. You can hire him yourself. Go reach out to him over on Instagram here. Okay, now as we mentioned, these drums were recorded relatively hot, and then we squeezed them pretty aggressively with lots of compression in post, primarily with the Vulf compressor. This is just my own personal preference, but I also used Shep's Omni channel to bring out a bit more distortion in it in conjunction with the Vulf compressor. This not only brought out the kick and snare, but as we mentioned in the first half of this video, it also brings out the room sound. You know, with all of these different instruments being monitored in the room through those studio monitors, those Yamahas in the background of the shot, the drums are picking up on the bass, the keys, and the guitar. So even though the DI sounds from the strings and the keys are incredibly dry and very direct, they're not unnatural. Now, all of that said, I wasn't really vibing particularly with the snare bleed that was coming through on the kick drum, so I ended up low passing the kick drum. And then to bring out the fatness in the kick, I personally believe there is a sample under that kick drum, so we added a sample under the kick. So let's hear how that sounds mixed, unmixed, and then with the sample. So I'm lumping the guitar and bass together whenever it comes to this video, just because there wasn't really much done to them. You know, when you think about like a funk track, oftentimes the guitar and the bass are pretty dry, direct sounds anyways. We want as much immediacy and as much attack as possible in these sounds. So for the most part, they have that focusing EQ that I mentioned. They have the Vulf compressor and a bit of distortion added through Goodhertz tube. But beyond that, there really wasn't much done to the guitar and the bass. I will say, preset lots of attack on the Vulf compressor, really sick and really great for that Vulf bass sound. So definitely check that out. Shout out to both Dan and Rami from Juice. You've seen them before, particularly in the Beatles video. They are insane musicians, and that will show as soon as you listen to this performance. Let's hear these sounds mixed, unmixed, and then with the drums. Keys were literally just an EQ and Goodhertz wow control, and there wasn't anything else on these keys. It was a Whirly emulation on a Nord, and Jordan Robertson absolutely crushed it as per usual. You've also seen him on the Beatles video and a few other ones like the Hozier video. Here's his newest album. You should check it out for sure. I think this like kind of highlights a key takeaway for this style of production. Mixing in the context of things like a Vulfpeck track, things that are so like instrumentally focused and things that are very much about like an instrument sounding like what it sort of stereotypically sounds like. A guitar sounding like a guitar, a whirly sounding like a whirly. Mixing in the context of a song like that is very much a supportive role. I'm not trying to do anything absolutely insane. I'm just trying to figure out the EQs and the compression settings so it best supports the musicians. Referring back to Jack's mixing course, he said something along the lines of mixing is both the most important part of a track and not important at all, because it is responsible for taking the track from raw audio to a listenable product, but at the same time, a really good song is gonna shine regardless of the mix. It should be something that gets out of the way, just there to support the role of the musicians and the music on display. And I think that really shows in how we're discussing particularly this video. Simple DI tones, heavy compression, getting the sound of the room, and getting the sound of the performance as good as possible. Anyways, let's add the keys on to everything else. Vocals were just Goodhertz tone control. I know Goodhertz is sponsoring this video. I know y'all are probably thinking at this point, that's a lot of Goodhertz. Here's a shocker for anyone who hasn't seen the Patreon videos. These are just the plugins I use on pretty much every other track. Goodhertz is killer. So anyways, Goodhertz tone control, Vulf compressor, and lots of automating that delay as mentioned in the first half of this video. Playing around with it, choosing what phrases you want to highlight. And of course, a really vibey, amazing performance by the one and only Taylor Williams, who had the daunting task of doing an Antoine Staley. You can check out his stuff here. To me, he sounds like the modern day Marvin Gaye, and it's absolutely sick. So here's the automation lanes for that slapback delay. You can see how much we're changing it from phrase to phrase and choosing when and how to highlight different parts of the vocal. It dances around the vocal mix just as much as the vocal mix dances around the melody.
Aquarian for Taurus, strike on the box. Woo, for focus, Roberta Flack, Donnie Hathaway, and Frank Sinatra. Aquarian for Taurus, strike on the box. Woo, for focus, Roberta Flack, Donnie Hathaway, and Frank Sinatra.
So the mix is done. Now it's time to send it off to mastering, and for anyone who skipped the intro, the actual person who mastered 1612, Devin Kerr, is going to master our track. Originally, I was just trying to put like 5 minutes of this section into the video. It ended up being like over 20 minutes long. I cut it down to 10. The full 20 minutes is over on Patreon. Just, there's so much amazing information that I really couldn't chop it down too much. So I hope you enjoy.
All right, what's going on, man? Guys, we have Devin Kerr here. He actually mastered 1612. And Devin, you did like all of the first few albums, right?
Yeah, I think up until like the last couple, so maybe the first 5 or something.
So I'm going to tell you about like what I've been struggling with, critiques on the mix, how you would change it in the master, and just kind of approach it how you would with a regular Vulf song. I feel like my snare, and specifically this sort of like tambourine that was attached to the drumstick, is so hyperactive, but at the same time I want to bring out more brightness in my mix. But when I do that, it gets so hyperactive. So I'm gonna just A/B between the two.
Sometimes I write a little song to remember the lyrics. I go 16, 12. Well, that's the code in my heart. I go 1, 6, 1, 2.
Yeah, great. I hear a couple things. The Vulf 1612 is kind of like both brighter and less bright at the same time, which is kind of like a common mastering thing of like you're trying to have your cake and eat it too. Vulf stuff is usually, you know, kind of has a rolled off sound, but in some places it's kind of airy. So that's tough to achieve. And usually there'll be one element in the mix that's like limiting how bright something can be. In your case, definitely hear that tambourine, and like I'd love to bring out more snare without the tambourine, but I'm assuming it's like a 2-channel drum recording.
It is.
Yeah, so I mean that's like a thing that happened in a lot of Vulf masters too. It'd be a bit of a struggle, and I would do stuff with, you know, either de-essers, multi-band compression, maybe some expansion even, or a transient thing.
Why don't I pass you this mix?
Okay, so I have a couple things up here. Be your dry mix, and for fun I have Jack's mix that he sent me, and then I have the 1612 master as well. Okay. It's just kind of fascinating. Definitely still more room in yours.
Yeah, I was fighting the room the whole time.
Some of like a tape emulation could help with that, because a lot of tape machines, you know, they kind of die. It has like an expansion quality. I don't know if you have Toop, but these FE modes will do that. Yeah, these ones would be cool to try on the drums to like almost, you know, expand them a little bit, kind of let it be a little deader sounding. You want to try to tame the tambourine and then do some mastering on it?
Yeah, let's do it.
There's like a bunch of ways we could do this, but probably the easiest, so many different versions of RX now. Some of the like tambourines, certain cymbals are like, you know, can be your mastering nemesis, and like you can already see it here, Spectrum, where the tambourine is. Do you see these little lines that go the entire way through? That's tambourine. Yeah, so I mean, you can see this is just 8K to 15, and you see these lines. These are definitely tambourine. You can almost just do this without listening to it, and then we'll check it out. Usually what I do is like something like this spectral repair, and you just do it vertically on the entire tune, and we should see it like reduce. Get some different.
So you don't forget it. Sometimes I write a little song.
Yep.
Remember the lyrics. I go 16.
Yeah, cool.
And then I'm trying to bring out the kind of the above 10K in the snare and get that like halo effect on the mix.
Yeah, so if I think about that, trying to bring out the snare a little bit, sounds a little woofier than the actual track. Maybe one of the first things I do to bring out snare is this mid-side trick, which is just use the tilt on the mids, which usually grabs like vocal, snare. That should sound nice. Let me try that.
1, 2. Stop. Aquarian. Port orbit. Strike on the box.
So really quick, for those who don't know, Devin is doing something here called mid-side EQing. This essentially means that the middle, the mono part of the track, and the left and right stereo parts of the track are EQ'd differently.
need to set it.
And then like, maybe it's getting a little too bright. So I would maybe do, some tape stuff. I think this is probably what I used on the actual 1612. Use this one a lot. Might have been in a different plugin at the time, but
Sometimes I write a little song so you don't forget it. Sometimes I write a little song to remember the lyric.
yeah, sweet.
I also think maybe the combination of the bass and the kick, it's a bit subby.
Yeah, a lot of the Wolf stuff is like, rolled at 60 or something, which is like, definitely a more vintage sound. Yeah, so let's try that. Maybe 60 here on the low cut.
Again, I almost cut this, but for this next part of the video, try and be like a fly on the wall and just observe how Devin, with just a handful of plugins, just completely transforms this mix.
Well, listen, but you need to set it. Sometimes I write a little song so you don't forget it. Sometimes I write a little song to remember the lyric. I'll go 16, 12. Well, that's the code in my heart. I go 1, 6, 1, 2. Stop. Aquarian. For Taurus. Strike on the box. More focus. Roberta Flat Dotty at the way. Well, listen, but you need to set it. Sometimes I write a little song so you don't forget it. Star, I go 16, 12. See, that's the code in my heart. I go 1, 6, 1, 2. That's the code in my heart. I go 1, 6, 1, 2. I go 16, 12. Oh, that's the code in my heart. I go 1, 6, 1, 2. Star, I go 16, 12. See, that's the code in my heart. I go 1, 6, 1, 6, 1, 6, 1, 6, 1, 2, 6, 1, 2, 16, 12.
I think we're getting close.
Sick, man. I'm sorry. I'm just like watching in amazement. Can you describe a little bit about like the thought process here just for the people at home?
I'm listening to like Stereo Field. That was kind of this change. I heard that master is a good deal wider, despite it mostly being a mono mix. This, I'm hearing like a bunch of stuff in the vocal. What's the vocal mic on this?
That was 58.
Which makes sense that this is a little gnarly on a 58, like that 3.5 region.
I really appreciate like how much of it is like reduction.
Yeah, very easy to end up in a place where like all the bands are just, +6 in the EQ. And it's just like, yeah, it sounds better, but it's louder. Especially for like bell stuff, I like to do those as cuts usually, and then use, broader things. So like, use this, or the tube filters are really nice and broad as well. I mean, do you want to do any more? You want to try to get even closer, or?
If you want to, I'm game.
Yeah, I would often like listen to just the sides or just the mids of a mix, and do EQ that's specific to both of those. You have to be kind of careful when you do it. Use broad strokes EQ. And yeah, that thing I did in midside, this mono below, is like generally a wise thing to do in mastering, just so you don't end up with a ton of wasted sub energy in the sides or just kind of mud.
Yeah, man, it sounds sick.
Okay, cool. Kind of amazing how much you can get done on just the two bus.
Remember that you can check out the Patreon if you wanted to see me break down this independent mix. Remember, you can download the raw stems and mix it yourself, and enjoy the performance. See you on the other side.
Sinatra. 16, 12. Well, that's the code of my heart. I go 1, 6, 1, 2. Star. I go 16, 12. See, that's the code of my heart. I go 1, 6, 1, 2. Star. A peace of mind, a friend of mine. Whoa, 16, 12. See, that's the code of my heart. I go 1, 6, 1, 2. Star. I go 16, 12. Huh. Oh, that's the code of my heart. I go 1, 6, 1, 2. Star. I go 16, 12. See, that's the code of my heart. I go 1, 6, 1, 6, 1, 6, 1, 6, 1, 2. A star. I go 16, 12. See, that's the code of my heart. I go 1, 6, 1, 6, 1, 6, 1, 6, 1, 6, 1, 6. I go 16, 12. Huh. Oh, that's the code of my heart. I go 1, 6, 1, 6, 1, 6. Say you never, never forget it. You never forget it. I said 16, 12. See, that's the code of my heart. I said the key is the key is the key is the key is the key. Hey, 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 hey. I said 16, 12. Oh, that's the code of my heart. I go 1, 6, 1, 6, 1, 6. Sing you never, never forget it. You never forget it. Oh no. 16, 12. See, that's the code of my heart. You better never, never, you never,
Oh my god, it's so hot, dude. Hope you enjoyed that performance. That one was really fun. The edit was really fun on that to make it look all kind of memey and have those keyframe zooms. See you in the next one soon. It's going to be pretty cool. Working on it now. About to go take a microphone and hold it out of a moving car. Which I guess is kind of a hint on the next video, but I'd be surprised if anyone guesses it from that. Later, guys. Bye-bye.